Welcome to Pharmacy View podcast, where we provide regular interviews with pharmacists and key people within Australian pharmacy and the associated global industry. In this stream of podcast episodes, we discuss with our guests the full scope of leadership tools that go into building the pharmacy leader's toolbox for team and career success. I am your host, Chantelle Turner, pharmacist, leadership coach, and founder of Turn Pharmacy Leadership. My guest today is proudly brought to you by Shopfront Solutions for all your shelf and digital marketing needs, part of the Arion Technologies Group.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Pharmacy View podcast. I am super excited to be talking to Kristina Fox today. Kristina is a community pharmacist. She's a pharmacy owner, and she is one of the really exciting brains behind the complete care pharmacy model that is currently being rolled out around various states, but I'll leave that for Kristina to talk about. One of the reasons why I've got Kristina on today is to talk about this journey, but also to talk about how leadership takes a role in rolling out these pharmacies, and particularly how to manage change through something that is really epic for community pharmacy. So welcome, Kristina. Thanks so much for making some time to have a chat with me.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for referring to it as epic. I think that I'm obviously very proud of our team here at Rosny Park and the model that we've created. And you've definitely highlighted that change can be difficult for a lot of people. And there's a lot of uncertainty with change. So I'm definitely keen to talk to you today about how we've implemented it at Rosny and then in the other stores that are becoming complete cares, which is super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really keen to dig into that with you. Let's paint the picture and go back a few years and think back to, I guess, your journey that got you into pharmacy and up to the point where you were at Rosny Park. And I know from listening to the AJP podcast that you did, which I thoroughly recommend to anyone who wants to know about the business side of Complete Care, you said that you're a different brand before Complete Care. So can you just tell me a bit about your pharmacy story? What led you to Rosny Park?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a pharmacist now for, I think, about 15-ish years, but I've been working in pharmacy since I was in high school. And I grew up in Canberra and moved to Tasmania to study pharmacy. And I actually then moved all around the country and different states and territories and landed back in Tassie and was managing a pharmacy down the road. I really wanted to get into ownership, and the opportunity came up at Rosny Park, and we were branded differently at the time. And the reason I got into the pharmacy ownership space was because I wanted to be able to implement different things in a community pharmacy setting so that I could benefit the health of my community at large. And I never thought about making a model that would then roll out across Australia. That was never, ever on my mind. But we started introducing different services at Rosny Park, and we implemented NDIS, we got a nurse practitioner, we had different allied health, and the pharmacy was growing, and it was really exciting being able to offer all these new services to the community. And then I was like, we are getting to the point where we are totally burnt out. Our staff were burnt out. We felt that we wanted to continue to implement and bring about change and do things in the pharmacy, but we didn't know how we could possibly do that because we literally got as many computers as we could. We had as many people on the floor that we could, and we had, we just had no way to actually spend more time with patients, and we were really inefficient, like really, really inefficient. So you put on more people, but it didn't really bring about, how do I say it? Even though you put on another person or another pharmacist, we still weren't able to get pharmacists on the floor interacting with patients and providing health solutions. And so that's sort of the journey to where we were in our old model. And then it was, what are we going to do and how can we move forward? Because we're sort of hit this point where we need to make a change. So does that make sense? Yeah. A lot of pharmacy owners feel that way across Australia at the moment. Like, I don't think I was the only one. I think people want to do more for their community. They're trying everything that they can, and then you close the doors. I remember at our old site, we'd close the doors at night, and then our pharmacists would be there for another hour and a half just tidying up all of the jobs from the day because we were running in chaos.
Yeah. So I think you're 100% right that I think most pharmacy owners feel like that, and I get that from speaking to clients quite regularly as well. And it decreases job satisfaction on the front line too. Coming back to you for a second, have you always been a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, or?
I don't see myself as an entrepreneur at all. I know some people do say that to me at the moment, but I don't think of myself as that. I think of myself as someone who likes to, if there's a problem that I'm facing, then I like to try and find a solution to that problem. So I think someone actually described me recently as a fault finder. And I think that's probably what I am. I'm someone who, we might be doing we might be doing 80 things out of 100 right, but there's 20 things that aren't quite right that are problems, and then I want to try and find solutions to those problems. So with the model that we came up with, it actually was initially, we came up with it as a team. So you can't do anything without the support of an amazing team behind you. So I don't think it's just me. I think it's all my pharmacists here. I think it's my front of shop staff as well, my dispense techs, pharmacy assistants. And we just had all these issues that we were coming up and we were facing. And it was like, well, how do we fix this? How do we improve that? And the only way that we could actually come up with a model to improve it was to completely scratch what we were doing previously and then completely change from layout to systems to processes. We just had to completely change what we were doing. But I think I'm just very fortunate that I've got a really good team at home in my home life and a really good team at work. And that allows me to come up with innovative solutions for community pharmacy. So
this brings me to my next question, fault finder. You said that at the beginning that there was, lots of things that weren't really working for the pharmacy despite the best attempts, and it felt like it was working in chaos.
Yeah.
How does this little idea spark? Is it, imagine if, or was it a little bit more strategic than that? And how did it start to gain momentum that, this could be something that we could really do?
Yeah, I think it was it gained momentum because it's a good question. I think it is a little bit of like we've got this problem. So how can we find a solution to that problem? Imagine if we were able to, instead of greeting a patient at the counter, at a scripts-in counter, imagine if we moved the counters and we put a table or something in the middle of the store and we were next to the patient. Let me give you an example of something really simple that was a big problem for us and is a big problem for a lot of pharmacies at the moment, and that is just inputting a prescription, which should be so simple, right? But 10 years ago, a patient would walk into the pharmacy with a paper prescription. They would know which ones that they wanted and you tick the ones that they wanted. They may potentially keep their prescriptions on file, and so you might grab out their physical file of prescriptions and tick the ones that they wanted. And you add them to a physical basket, and the basket gets placed on the counter. It may be coloured for waiting and it may be coloured for coming back, right? Yep. So, but then that had become a problem because patients come into the pharmacy and they now have got electronic prescriptions, which was rushed to be implemented because of COVID. We have no way of really entering a digital prescription on their phone with a paper prescription that they've got into the one basket. We don't have a way to add their prescriptions on file because they might have a combinations of digital prescriptions and paper prescriptions on file. And then they also want a vaccination. How do you also indicate that they want a vaccination into that basket? And so it was about, we've got this problem. How do we come up with a solution for it? Imagine if we could do this. So you're right. It's a bit like, imagine if we could create a basket, a digital basket, which contained all prescription types and consultations, and we had visibility of what was in that basket everywhere within our pharmacy. How could we do that? And so it was an imagine if at the start, and then it was connecting with the right people within the industry who are way smarter than I am. And I'll give you an example of someone who is way smarter than I am, who's been around for a long time, and that's Bruce Annabelle. And he was involved very early in the journey, and I attribute a lot of the success of Complete Care to him. And he said to me, well, Kristina, if we want to build something like this, then we have to find the right partner. And so then we went around and we tried to find someone who could help us build what we needed for community pharmacy. So it was about presenting an idea to someone who is way smarter than me, who knows something about software and technology, and this is what we want to create. Is this a possibility? And quite often they'll say no to you, and then I'll give them this massive list of the things that I want to achieve. And then even if they just achieve 25% of it, it's better than what we had before, which we didn't have a solution previously. So I hope that answers that question. But it's good to dream big. What have you got to lose? Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're never fully ready at the end of the day. And so sometimes we just need to start. And I think that that's a really key thing that you touch on there, starting with the imagine if, but then bringing that back into reality with connecting with the right people as well, because, sometimes those external consultants, they work in their genius space, and that doesn't need to be our genius space. But when we combine together, that's when the magic really happens.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And look, the thing with what we created as well is that a lot of people, and I think the problem is that when it's big corporates that try and make decisions and try and implement things like this and change, people nowadays, I think they overanalyze everything and they over-evaluate everything. And so nobody does anything because everybody's too scared to actually do something. So, oh my gosh, what if we do implement this change in our pharmacy and patients hate it and they don't want to interact with pharmacists in a room one-on-one? What if we implement this change and all of the staff leave because they just dislike it so much? Well, what if we implement it, the software doesn't work quite the way that we want it to? Well, if you're too scared and too nervous about the change, and will it actually work, then you'll never do anything. And so I think a lot of people have good ideas, but people are too scared to implement it because they want to analyze everything to the minutiae. But we don't know if we don't try. We don't know what we don't know. So you have to just give it a go. And there have been things that I've implemented in the past, and not just in the complete care model, but as a pharmacist, that hasn't necessarily always worked the way that I thought it was going to work. But it was a start. And then what we were able to do is go, well, what is working, what isn't working, then how do we perfect this to make it better? With the developer that I'm working with on the software excipient, which forms part of Complete Care, quite often he says to me, Kristina, I don't want to build this module out too much with you, because I think if we try and build it and make it perfect from the start, then it'll take us ages to build it. Why don't we just give you like version 1? And then you guys can trial it, we can keep adding and changing, and then we end up getting, over time, it ends up improving. So I'm a big believer in nothing is ever going to be perfect, and it's all about continuous improvement. But if you don't put something in to start with, you don't have a starting point. That makes sense.
Oh, 100%. And it really is balancing that, taking the risk with the back end of the planning too. And it is hard to temper both, because, and I think that also comes back to our teams as well, and the people that we've got around us. Sounds like you're a software developer, is they're the ones that are saying, hey, look, let's look at the procedural side of things. Let's look at, how logistically we can make this work. And you're the one who is, possibly the one who wants to take the bigger risk and to be able to, stretch things. So it becomes this balance as well. So, look, we've got to the point now that you've got the idea. It's started to take shape, and you're going to bring Complete Care to life in its first incarnation, I guess, because I've got this funny feeling that you're probably up to version maybe 50 at least over the last couple of years.
It's always going to be changing,
Exactly. So, you've got this idea, you go, right, we're going to hit the go button, and I assume you've been discussing this among your leadership team. How do you then present that to your broader staff, and what was the initial reaction?
That's a really good question. So I think what I've learned in the last couple of years is that pharmacists, we think we're good communicators because we're really good at communicating with our patients. But sometimes as owners and leaders, we're not very good at communicating with our teams. It's really weird, because I can walk into some pharmacies sometimes and speak to pharmacy assistants, and they have no idea what's happening in the dispensary. So it was really important to us to bring our entire team, every single person, from our delivery driver through to our one of the partners in the pharmacist partners along on the journey. And so what we did initially was we brought, when we first decided that we were going to make a change, we got them all together in a group, and we made it fun. So we always make our activities really fun, and we got them involved in the decision making from the beginning to the end. So we talked to them about what we were planning on doing, the reasons why we were planning on doing them. And we didn't shy away from the challenges of the change as well. So we made sure that we reinforced what was going to be difficult, what was going to be fun, what was going to be different. And then we made sure that we told them about what the benefits would be to them as an individual, to the business as well, and also to the patients. And so once we met with them as a group, then what we did was we really clearly defined what the different roles and responsibilities were going to be in the new model. And when we spoke to them individually and we asked them where they thought that they would fit in the journey and how involved they wanted to be, some of them wanted to come in literally on the weekends with me and review what our merchandise strategy would be. Some of them wanted to come and speak with me with GPs about the change. So some wanted to be really involved. Some of them said, no, we're happy just to come along, but we don't need to be building it with you. So we let them choose their journey with us as well. And we constantly got feedback from the staff along the way. So we involved them all the time. We broke up into even little groups with our pharmacist team, and we collaborated almost every fortnight. So we checked in regularly. I even flew each of my pharmacists individually with me to Melbourne to meet with a developer to have a brainstorming day on with the developer and the software person individually. So they all felt like they were building this software for our whole team as well.
Yeah.
I got our team to celebrate as well outside of work. So it wasn't just about what we did in the store. We went away. So we took the team away to Adelaide, and we actually did a lot of things as a team outside of the pharmacy as well to make sure we were celebrating the milestones. Even little things like as the pharmacy was being built, like the new pharmacy, we got them to come in at night with a builder and walk around the site so they could see what was coming. And honestly, they were really, really, really excited. There was obviously still that uncertainty. I think there's always going to be uncertainty with change, but I think we managed that really well by staying positive and listening to them. And if they were concerned, we responded to their concerns, and just kept reinforcing about the change and why it was important. And then when we did move down into the new site, it was funny, my business partner and I said to each other that we would make sure that we were in the pharmacy, working in the pharmacy every hour that it was open until we felt that every single person within the team felt comfortable. So we opened 12 hours a day during the week, and I recall very vividly that we opened on the Monday, and we had 2 senior staff members on that Monday bawling their eyes out. And that just shows how hard change is. These are people that have been, one of them's been a dispense tech for probably, I reckon, close to 30 years, but their job role completely changed on that day. And so, but funnily enough, I remember, I also recall, I think it was either the Wednesday or the Thursday, I came up to her and I was like, oh, how are you feeling now? And she gave me a big hug and she's like, I love it. I'm so sorry I cried. I was such a baby. I don't know why I was upset, but it was just so different. And the difference for her was such a simple thing. So I'll give you an example. So previously we would always look for a prescription based on a physical basket. Because community pharmacy, you've got all your scripts lined up on a in the dispensary. And so for her to know what her next thing to do is, she looks for a basket, right? Yep. In our new model, we don't have physical baskets unless there is a paper prescription, because patients might have a digital script or they might have a script on file that we add at the triaging area. And all of the work for the dispense tech is actually queued up in Fred inside our software, and it timestamps the basket, and they can work through the priority of their baskets in a different way. So just the physical change in how she was grabbing her baskets was really hard to cope with in that initial instance. But then she understood the reason for the change later in the week, because she could see who was waiting, how long they'd been waiting for. The baskets went up and down according to priority. So if someone was urgent, it would go to the top. So all of a sudden, she felt better because she realised that she was going to be more efficient. There was a new system and new process, but it was actually allowing her to expand in her job role, and it was making her life easier. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
So the sentiment overall, though, was very, very positive. I was actually pleasantly surprised with how well the team adapted to the
Yeah.
change.
And it sounds like when you were right back at the beginning, though,
Yeah.
you laid a few key elements, or really foundations, to allow that engagement to occur, allowing people to be involved in the decision making,
Yeah.
being fully transparent, as best you can in terms of what's going to be difficult, what's going to be fun, what the benefits are to them, the business, the patients, and take some ownership as well around how they can be involved and how they want to be involved as well, which is, I guess, coming back to one of those needs of engagement around focusing on strengths. People are always going to tend to gravitate to what they like doing
Exactly. And
as well.
the funniest thing about these particular team members that I gave the examples for is they now want to roll within the brand, and they actually want to start helping other teams to transition to this new model. So they've gone from being a little bit hesitant and uncertain to actually now wanting to advocate for the model, which is really cool. And we have got one of our retail manager is now formed part of our complete care team, which is so cool. It's exciting.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So coming back to there's so much gold to unpack here, and I want to be mindful that of the time for our listeners as well. But I just want to, before I dive down communication and trust, which are going to be really key elements, I just want to draw you back to a question around decision making. You said that you involved your team in the decision making from the get-go. Speaking to other owners and some people that are in, I guess, leadership roles, when it comes to involving their team in decision making, it can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming for them because they feel that because they're involved in the decision making, it's almost that there's too many cooks in the kitchen. So what my question to you is how did you involve them in the decision making, but I guess maybe put a container around their involvement to still allow it to move in the trajectory that you and your business partners wanted?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you got to listen to what's important to them, and you've got to understand why did they suggest that as something that, if they come to you with a problem or something like an idea, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if you don't implement that, if that makes sense? Because I think they need to feel valued in the model and in your pharmacy as well. So I agree that some leaders might not want to have too many cooks in the kitchen, but if it's not something that's going to impact on anyone else and it's only going to improve other people's day, then why wouldn't we listen to what other people have got to bring to the table? If you constantly, as the leader, and you've got people that are wanting to actually speak up and suggest something and recommend a change, and you keep saying, no, that's not a good idea, or you don't actually implement it, then they're going to feel like their voice isn't heard and they'll stop coming to you with ideas. So, I think that we have a few different ways that they can communicate their ideas with us. So I'll give you a good example is that with our software, we have got, because I can't be across everything all the time, but we've got like basically a template where if they have an idea around the software, they can put it in there. And so they might write down their initials and what their idea is about a change to the software or a process within the pharmacy. So it's not just limited to the software. It might be limited to the way that we're practicing in the pharmacy. And then it'll be someone who's in the leadership team. So it'll be a pharmacist, myself, who will go and speak to them and say, thanks for putting that idea in there. Can you explain to me that idea? And when you unpack that idea or that thing that they come to you with, you can quickly address and find out whether or not it's actually something that you can implement or you can't implement, and the reasons why you can and can't, and what the benefit would be if you do versus if you don't do that. So I think we have to listen to it, because a lot of junior people, they don't want to actually speak up about an idea, especially in community pharmacy. It might be we've got an 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are straight out of year 12, and they want to be able to have a voice within their workplace. So it's important to listen to them. And if it's an idea that maybe isn't going to work or isn't the right thing, can try and modify that to something that might work and give it a go. We even have next month we're doing a Shark Tank with our team. And so they can come with a big idea. So, the littler ideas can be addressed day to day. And like those big innovative ideas can be addressed at like a Shark Tank thing where you catch up with your team. Let's present a couple of ideas that we might want to implement in the pharmacy, and let's vote on what would be some good things for us to implement as a team. So what would be the best things that we think as a team would be really good? I love that we've always been open to that with our team, because that's how we're continually evolving, and it extends past just Rosny. I've asked every single person that's coming on board the model in the other states and territories to make sure that they have open communication with me about the things that they would love to implement in the model, because we want community pharmacies to be built by the people that are working in them, but not, and also the community. The community come to us with ideas as well.
Yeah.
And if it's a good idea, then we'll implement it. So maybe I'm different to others. I love as much ideas as possible coming, because I think that that's the way that you can have continuous improvement. So maybe I'm a bit different. I like all the ideas, Chantelle.
Yeah. And look, and we're all wired differently. And I think that probably ties back into your space of genius in terms of being a fault finder, that by being able to have those conversations with your staff, yes, around the different idea in terms of the endpoint implementation, but you use the word unpack. And unpack to me also is about getting to the root cause of the problem. And as you said, why they're actually bringing it to you in the first place. So maybe the end result that they're particularly looking at is not the final implementation, but the reason behind it is something that's really valid, and there's another option of being able to solve that issue along the way. So I think using them as your sounding board, and as you said, your ideas, that helps you to find solutions to the faults that come as well.
Absolutely. This whole model would not have been a success if we didn't listen to all of those cooks in the kitchen that were coming in saying, you should do this, you should do that. I think it's about having all of those ideas, all of the cooks, because I think as many people that want to contribute to a model, the better, but then making sure that there's always that one person, one or two people at the top that are listening to all of those ideas, and they're choosing which ones are the priority to implement as well. Because you can't implement everything all at once, can you? So, okay, well, if we have all the ideas and we keep track of everything from everybody that wants to contribute, and then we pick what is the most important thing for us to implement now, because that's the biggest problem, let's do that first, and then we'll work through the other things that everybody's, all the other ideas and things that people are contributing. But you're right, often it might be they've provided feedback on something, a feature, an improvement, and that's actually then led into something a little bit even better. Yeah.
And there's a real skill in being able to have those conversations. And you mentioned right at the beginning around that pharmacists think that they're good communicators because we're great at communicating with our patients, but communicating to our internal customers, I call our staff our internal customers, is a whole other kettle of fish. And it's actually, at least in my experience, a lot of the time is considered as an afterthought, and that's where there becomes breaks in the chain, and that's where inefficiencies can even compound beyond the simple things as well. And a simple conversation can sometimes really help to improve that too.
Absolutely. And as pharmacists, I think part of the problem, and as owners, is that we've often been really time poor.
Yes.
So the reason why communication is not so good is not because we're not trying. It's just because we are so busy in our day to day that we go, I'm going to talk to that staff member about X, Y, Z, and then all of a sudden the week is gone, and you never made that 2 minutes to have that conversation. So that's one thing I think that this model has made easier for us, is that it has made us so much more efficient, and we have really distinct roles. And the way that we are now able to communicate a little bit better with our team is that we can have pharmacists that aren't working on the shop floor, and then we have pharmacists that are working on the shop floor, and the ones that aren't can spend the time, because they're not patient facing, to communicate with the team members during the day without breaking the workflow, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Something that's been springing to mind as you've been talking here is the key elements or the attributes of a high functioning team. And Systems, you've clearly got down pat, and you've spent a lot of time there in terms of excipient, the layout, being able to have everything digitized in terms of your baskets and that seamless flow with all of the services that you're offering across the pharmacy and your consultations. We've also touched on communication a fair bit, and something else I'd love to just draw out for our listeners is to highlight that it seems like you've got multiple avenues of communication. So, there's obviously that face-to-face, there's the follow-up, there's some big stuff around Shark Tanks, there's little things in terms of your templates. So that variety and that multi-mode way of communicating is also really helping to benefit both your introverted team members and your extroverted ones, the ones that might like to just type your message as opposed to the ones that want to, jump in your face and give you 1,000 ideas all off the cuff. The other two things that I'd love to explore a little bit is tongue-tied, psychological safety and trust, and they do go hand in hand. You've mentioned a little bit around making sure everyone feels heard, which is clearly a thing around psychological safety. But if we look at the definition, psychological safety, the willingness to take interpersonal risk. How, through this change, I assume not everything has gone to plan. There has been glitches and mistakes because we're all human. How have you ensured that morale has stayed up and that people have been continuing to be willing to take those interpersonal risks through the process?
Oh, okay. So it's also multifaceted as to how we've done that as well. So you sort of touched on, and I didn't actually think about the fact that we communicate in all those different ways, but you're actually spot on. Keeping morale up. So the first thing that we've done is we've made sure that we've had a champion within the store, and this is not just within our store, but this is in rolling this out across all the other stores. So a complete care champion who is the person who is in basically the leader at the store level. They're the one that it doesn't have to be an owner. In our case, it is an owner, but they're leading by example. They're the one that is communicating day to day. They're the one that is persisting until the process is working, and they're the ones that are like maintaining a positive atmosphere with the team, and then bringing back anything that they might notice, because sometimes there's even like they might be able to pick up on a non-verbal cue or something like that. And then they can come back so we have a weekly catch up with the owners, pharmacist owners, and then we have regular catch-ups with the pharmacists, and so we can bring it back to the leaders. So the CCP champion does bring that back to us, but also, so that's one way that we keep morale up, is by having someone who is the driver in the store, who is leading the way by example, communicating, being positive about the whole model. But the other way we keep morale up is a different way. So we're making sure that we're constantly catching up with our team outside of work, so doing those fun things. I'm a very big one on finding out what it is that makes the morale in the team, and it is the simplest thing in our pharmacy, but hot chips and hot chips and coffees and things like that are really, really, really helpful tools. And I am constantly, they call me a feeder as well. I'm constantly buying things for the team. And it sounds so silly that it's like a gift giving thing, but it's about making their days a little bit brighter. And I think when you're making all these changes, that can be a big thing as well. But also everybody has different things that motivate them. So finding out what the motivations of the staff are as well. So some of the staff are motivated because they really want to be part of the brand. They want to do that sort of thing. Some of them are motivated because they really want to upskill. So a big thing that we've done is gone and found out from the team what it is that they want to do in the model. So we completely changed our roles and responsibilities, and we upskilled our staff. So what we did was we listened to them, and pharmacists wanted to be on the floor recommending and providing solutions to patients. So we listened to them and we got them on the floor working in the pods, face-to-face doing consultations. We're doing over 400 consults a day with patients.
Wow.
And then we've got pharmacy assistants that have upskilled and expanded their job roles into areas like NDIS. So becoming experts in that field and then becoming a champion in NDIS. We've got dispense techs that are now processing and running the entire dispensary area. So they're processing all of the prescriptions, deferring them in, doing the claiming. They're the ones that have been upskilled in Webster packing, or they've upskilled in compounding. So I think boosting morale is also about making sure that people are happy in their job. And putting them in where they're finding out what their strengths are and what they enjoy to do, and trying to match people's skills and personalities to their new roles. So I think that's a big part, and having fun as well, day to day. Our team have been, and you know what actually boosts morale more than anything is how much the patients love this new model. And so we're constantly told by the team every day at how they're just thanked constantly. They're thanked in the pharmacists are thanked in the pods. What do I owe you for this? Can I pay you any money? Thank you so much. I've never had this experience. Or when they get to the point of sale, it's the pharmacy assistants that are telling me that people are saying, it's the best pharmacy I've ever been into. I won't go anywhere else. I loved this. And so that helps to keep morale high as well. So even though it's challenging, they know that they're making a difference to people's health outcomes. So, yeah. I think it's lots of ways.
Yeah. And, I like to work with Gallup's needs for engagement, and there's 5 of them. And something that is also standing out as you're talking is that it sounds like the needs for engagement are really being met by yourself and your team leaders for your staff as well. So the number one is purpose. And if you're thinking about it, that they're getting the feedback directly from the clients or your patients saying, oh my God, we love this. This is the best pharmacy ever. It's proof that you guys are living your purpose, and you set that out right at the beginning in terms of your why and what the benefits were going to be. A caring manager, well, in your case, that sounds like hot chips and coffee. And those ongoing conversations is one in itself, and we've already covered that.
I love community pharmacy. I've been disappointed in the way that community pharmacy has been going, and about the fact that community pharmacy's become so much about a volume of prescriptions. So it's all about how many scripts can we put through, and it's all about cheaper medicines and much less about services and provision of healthcare. I'm all about timely and affordable access to healthcare, which is why part of complete care, every patient's got access to a nurse practitioner every hour that the pharmacy is open. That's huge to me. And making it affordable. So for me, it's about changing community pharmacy. And look, we could have just done it here at Rosny, but my purpose is, if we can implement this model well at Rosny, and then other people can adapt to this model, and we can change the way we're practicing in our pharmacy so that we've got happier pharmacists, happier pharmacy teams, happier patients, and then we can improve health outcomes of communities. So I don't think we realise as pharmacy owners and pharmacists that we can actually do big things in our communities. So if we can implement a new service, or we can practice we can improve the health outcomes of our entire community, which is awesome. So my purpose has been about providing innovative solutions to community pharmacy so that they can improve health outcomes of their patients. And that's what I want to do. And I want to make community pharmacy sustainable into the future. So purpose is big for me, and I think it's really big for our team as well. Like, every team member that works here knows the reason why we're doing this. If it was easy to do, then other pharmacies would have done it already. So it hasn't been an easy thing to do for us to implement this model. But we are determined to make it a success, because we want to prove that community pharmacy can be run differently, and it needs to be, like, it needs to change. So purpose is big. So thank you for raising that word.
No, and thank you for adding more context to the power of purpose as well, because without that clear vision of, accessible and, innovative opportunities to service your community, nothing else happens. The model doesn't change. The pods don't happen. The integration doesn't happen. Excipient doesn't happen. Nothing happens without starting at that purpose, and then being able to, relay that and really embed that into your communications and the way that you communicate with your staff. And I know we spoke off air around the slogan of, care starts here. It all comes out in our language. And I think that that's really important. The last thing in terms of those 5 needs of engagement is ongoing development, professional development, and you've clearly been able to, piece that piece of the puzzle in there by being able to focus on strengths and see where people want to upskill, and then being able to provide that service as well. So rolling into, I guess, the last pieces of this puzzle, and this is probably a little bit of a self-indulgent question, but there's numerous research papers that show that with the advent of AI and automation, that emotional intelligence will become or is becoming more important than ever. I'm curious, now that you've got all of these efficiencies and you're working with less chaos, how are you seeing the need or the value of emotional intelligence in your staff playing out in these stores?
Oh my gosh, that is such a tricky question. But
It is.
yeah, so I guess we're already seeing it play out with our team, and not just our team, but also with our patients. So you're right, like automation has gained, because we've had automation in community pharmacy for ages, right? But sometimes I don't think that we've had those efficiency gains and become more productive. But I think because we have our robot delivering medications into a clinic room, then we have seen those efficiency gains. We have our software that allows patients to check in themselves. That there's a self-serve element, there's a pharmacotherapy check-in. And so all of that has reduced the chaos in our pharmacy and has enabled, so automation has enabled us basically to change the way we practice. But what that has meant is that our team are working differently. And in fact, in a lot of ways, like our pharmacist team are working more in isolation as well. So our pharmacists are working in the pods more in isolation. So I think it's meant that our leaders are just consciously checking more in with our staff and monitoring in on those non-verbal cues. So that has been a big thing that we need to do. Like we need to pick up on those. But also from a patient perspective, when I say we've seen it playing out with our team in that way, we've also seen it playing out with our patients, because what the automation and AI has done is it's actually provided our pharmacists with more one-on-one time in private with our patients to connect with them. And so what that means is that we are also having to become smarter and in the way that we pick up on those cues with our patients in the pods, so that then we can provide a solution or we can intervene accordingly, if that makes sense. Because we will have a patient in a room, and so we've got automation, so therefore there's less time actually processing a prescription and dispensing and more time talking to the patient, and we can pick up on so much more in those pods. And so it's a real skill that our pharmacists are going to have to learn as they, like when I say our pharmacist team at Rosny have become very good at that in the pods. However, it's something that is part of our training for the model as well. Pharmacists I've found that are implementing this model, even the most like amazing pharmacists that I've seen, they get into this model and they lose their confidence a little bit. They feel like an intern again because of automation and AI, the way they're practicing is completely different. And so all of a sudden they feel like they need to upskill in even their communication with their patients. And so, yeah, I see it playing out that it requires more training and different types of training for our teams as well and our leaders.
Yeah. And I think you're 100% right. And because we create more time, we are having these more deep conversations with our patients, but also being able to pick up on, the cues from our staff as well. It really makes me think of the professional practice standards in terms of those around communication and leadership and self-awareness that, sometimes we always think about our professional practice standards and think about our clinical knowledge and health services and things like that. But, these are really key core components that are the compulsory components around the standards too. So I think that it's going to become more and more of a focus as we move into full scope, and however that's looking for any model, but particularly in truly patient-facing roles like yours in the pods as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I could give you literally hundreds of examples of emotional intelligence becoming more important. And I can give you so many examples of things that have like played out in the pods. One example that comes to mind is we have obviously the triage desks, and what happens in our model is that we don't have any conversations at all about health on the shop floor. So that is a very big shift for community pharmacy. You know, we have counters where we talk about counselling, but we also have all of our we actually call it front of practice, but we've got front of shop, which is what most people would refer to it to, and they counsel about over-the-counter medications in the middle of the shop. And it could just be about head lice, it could be about anything, right? We take everything. So as soon as the patient comes into our pharmacy and says, oh, I'm here for, and this actual example was a lady came in and said that she was here for thrush. And so a pharmacy assistant triaged her in at our triage desk, and the pharmacist, being me on that day, walked her into the pod. And it was interesting because she shut the door behind her. And we actually have our pods, which are a stand-up consult room, and we do the consultation with the doors open. And I thought, oh, that's weird that she shut the door. And she then quickly, I'd seen that she'd been triaged in for thrush, so I was going in thinking that was a conversation we were going to have. And she actually said to me, I've been into your pharmacy before. She lived about 50 minutes drive from the pharmacy, and she was the first person in at 8 a.m. in the morning. And she said, I know your process and how you bring patients into the rooms to have health conversations. And I think I do have thrush, but she said, actually, the main reason I came here is because my mum just passed away and I don't have anyone to talk to. And I knew that you would bring me in the room and have a conversation with me. And I really need someone. I really need to talk to someone. So, and it warmed, like, in a way, it warmed my heart. Like, I'm obviously very upset for her and we went through everything, but I was like, oh, I'm so glad that, you know, this model has this differentiator and patient has driven all this way to the pharmacy because obviously can't get into their GP or there's no other health professional that they feel that they can access. And she probably didn't want to talk about this in the middle of the floor, but she knew that our model had the pods and she health conversations in there. And so that made me feel really good. But we have to be equipped with the skill set to deal with these kind of conversations. So that's going to be really important for pharmacists going forward because we are so accessible. And as more of our job roles are automated, then we need to be able to deal with these kind of health conversations and know what to do when people do come to us in a crisis.
Yeah. Bit of a paradox there, isn't it? Like, incredibly sad, but incredibly uplifting and heartwarming all at the same time.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the way that this model has enabled our pharmacists to connect with patients, and it makes me feel really happy that it's going to be in different communities across Australia, because then hopefully there'll be more people like this lady who knows how complete cares operate and feels comfortable coming in and having a conversation with their community pharmacist. So, yeah, it's good.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And, you know, coming back to one of those initial words that I used, it's epic. It's absolutely a huge disruptor for our industry in the most incredible way.
Thank you. I think,
and it's, keep going, sorry.
I keep interrupting you, Chantelle.
That's okay.
For such a long time in community pharmacy, we've relied so heavily on the remuneration from the PBS. And so therefore it's all about let's drive up our script numbers, right? And then when they started with PBS reform, it's about, okay, well, what other stuff can we put in our front of shop to sell more stuff? Let's put cosmetics in. Let's put gifts in. Let's put all this crap in the front of our pharmacies and try and sell more stuff because they're taking away our PBS remuneration. Well, why don't we flip it on its head and go, patients can't get access to their GP. They need timely access. We know full scope is coming, but we already have our own scope in community pharmacy, which is all of our front of practice, all those minor ailments that patients come into us for, or they don't even know that they can come into us for. And let's start charging more for our advice and for minor ailment stuff. And let's start actually flipping from just prescriptions to service in community pharmacy and have a way that we can do that. And that's why we became pharmacists in the first place, is because we thought we'd be providing health solutions to patients, not putting labels on boxes and checking prescriptions. So but we need a way to do it. Anyway, I'm not going to interrupt you again.
No, I could listen for hours. There is so much gold in this conversation, and I think this is why you're the expert fault finder. I can see why someone gave you that title. So we have covered such a a wide array here today, right from, I guess the inception and the imaginative, and right through to the purpose of wanting to provide an innovative, very much community focused, affordable, accessible healthcare service, to job satisfaction and how you built that with your team, and being able to tie the purpose with the strengths of your team to being able to have those conversations, building trust. And then we got down into the nitty gritty around, what that looks like on the floor in terms of patient interactions. And we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of, particularly around excipient and the layout, because that's not where I wanted to focus. I wanted to see and get into the meat of how this comes to life with your team. And you've articulated it beautifully and have really inspired me to, I guess, keep going with my vision, which is helping pharmacists to gain these emotional intelligence skills, so that they can help their patients and their staff to be, the best versions of themselves and get the outcomes that they want. So win-win-win, which seems like it might be a pseudo model for you guys, win for the individual, win for the team, win for the business, and also win for the patients. Last but most definitely not least. So there is one question, and I don't think I actually put this as a bit of a forewarning when I emailed you, but I do like to ask everyone that if you were building a leader's toolbox that you could give to all of these pharmacists, whether they're complete care pharmacists or otherwise, and give them one tool to put into this toolbox that would make their lives infinitely better or their teams infinitely better, what would that tool be?
Oh, and I'm guessing it's not a physical tool. I'm joking. So,
It's not hot chips.
I think the biggest thing is communication.
Yeah.
And when I say communication, it's a two-way communication. So making sure you communicate what you're thinking with them, but also equally that you give them the opportunity to speak and communicate to you, so that you're listening to them as well. So I know listening is probably a different tool, but communication, hopefully, it's about how you communicate to someone and then how you take on their feedback and then listen to them and then address those concerns. Because I think that the most effective leaders are good communicators. That's what I've seen in it's so funny in evaluating because we have had a lot of interest to become complete care, and we have had to then put a really strict process in and go, well, the only people that we would really want to accept into the model are people that have got a really strong leader, and part of their leadership is around their communication skills. So it's important, but a lot of people don't naturally know how to communicate, and so I think what you're doing in pharmacy is also awesome, by the way, because if you can help empower pharmacists, that is so important, and then they'll see the fruits in their, of their labor, I guess, in the results of their business, and then they'll have happier staff, which will lead to happier patients and better business outcomes and healthy businesses. And so, I think that's my answer, is I'd give them communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's really epitomized in our whole conversation today around involving people in decision making and making sure that they're heard and including them, and having those multi modes of communication avenues for all of your staff. So thank you so much. I hope that our listeners get as much out of this as I have, because it's been incredibly enlightening and inspiring as well. So thank you so much for being with us.
Oh no, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to me, and I hope that it helps someone in some way, shape or form. And I'm also very open to people sending me an email or sending me a text or calling the pharmacy to chat, because I really do like helping people. And even if they don't want to join something like Complete Care, I just love helping pharmacists to improve their businesses. So I'm more than happy to chat to anyone and host them at Rosny and show them around the pharmacy. I love doing that. So please get in touch with me if you want. Yes.
Thank you so much. And we'll put your details of how to get in touch with you in the show notes as well. So easy done. So thank you so much. And look forward to crossing paths again soon.
Definitely. In Hobart, hopefully.
Amen. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Pharmacy View podcast. And don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment if you found this episode of value or have feedback. Podcast episodes are promoted through social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, and major podcast mediums. And each episode can be found on the Pharmacy View webpage with links to guest contact and business details. If you're a pharmacist or industry support supplier who would like to join us on an episode, send us a message through LinkedIn or complete an inquiry form on the Pharmacy View webpage. I am your host, Chantelle Turner, pharmacist, leadership coach, and founder of Turn Pharmacy Leadership. And on behalf of Shopfront Solutions and Arion Technologies, thanks again for joining us today on the Pharmacy View podcast.